Well, hey everyone. Thanks so much for joining us for our November Rooted Regional Group. We're so glad you're here. Today, we're going to have a conversation on partnering with parents, one of the five pillars of Rooted's ministry. I'm joined here by fellow brothers and sisters, fellow laborers in the gospel, parents, and practicing youth ministers. My name is Rebecca Lankford. I am on staff with Rooted as a ministry development coordinator. I also work in ministry at a church here in Birmingham, Alabama, doing young adult ministry. But prior to that, I was in youth ministry. So we're really glad to have you here today. Connor, tell us about yourself.
Yeah, thanks, Rebecca. My name is Connor Coskery. I'm on staff as youth minister at Redeemer Community Church in Birmingham, Alabama. I've been in my role for 4 years this month. And yeah, super excited to be with you.
Great. How about you, Tracy? Tell us about yourself.
Sure. I've got three kids. I'm a mom of three kids. I'm not on staff at our church, but I've been serving alongside my husband, who's been in youth ministry for 16 years. But recently, in the past 2 years, we switched over to college and young adults. So happy to be here.
Wonderful. We're so glad you're here, Tracy. All right. And Steve, tell us about you.
Yes, I'm here at Chinese Bible Church in Rockville, Maryland, in the DC area, about 30 miles outside of the area. I've been here for the past 7 years. Almost all that time has been in youth ministry. I just recently switched over to the English adult ministry, but I've been in youth ministry overall about 12 years.
Awesome. Well, super grateful to have all of y'all's perspectives today as we talk about partnering with parents in ministry. So let's start off with kind of a basic question, but a really important question of what do we mean when we talk about partnering with parents? What is it? What does it look like? And then secondly, why is it important? So whoever wants to start, let's talk about what is partnering with parents and why is it important?
I can start.
Great, Steve.
I've mentioned that this before to people, how on the sports teams, you think about Michael Jordan's Bulls, the big, most successful sports teams of all time. There's star players and there's role players. There's players who play big prominent roles, and then there's players who play kind of like niche roles. And as youth parents, youth pastors partnering with parents, the tendency is to think that we are like the star players because our job is the spiritual consultant, so to speak, and parents kind of support. But actually, it's the other way around. Since I've learned from my time being in youth ministry, actually, we are the support and the parents are the ones who really are the stars. Because when you really think about it, I did an exercise before about the busiest kids, about breaking down the number of hours for sleep and school and other things like that. It's actually about 51-3. About the amount of time that parents have with them minus the obligated things compared to the amount of time that I would get with students every week. And it's about 51-3 or 17-1. So for every hour that I get with them, parents get 17. So they play much more of a prominent role in the development of their students than I would. Mm-hmm. So it's important that we partner with them.
Absolutely. Yeah. Those are sobering numbers.
Yeah, I'll continue off that. When I think about partnering with parents and really think about how we disciple children and youth in the church, a really prominent passage, Deuteronomy 6, gives us this. It's where we get this picture of what this really family of faith discipleship looks like. And what it shows us is that discipleship is a community project. Mm-hmm. That it's to be done in the context of other families, other parents. That there's all these influences, all those yous in Deuteronomy 6 are those plural you alls. And so, as a youth minister, we have a unique voice. We have a voice that is important. But I think it's important for us to always remember that we're only one component of the discipleship project that is happening among the families in the faith. And so we, as youth ministers, we want to invest deeply in those families, knowing that they play such an essential and important, and as Steve said, a critical role in seeing kids come to know the Lord and worshiping Him with their lives.
Yeah, that's great, Connor.
If I could add to that, I think there's definitely the critical role of the parents coming alongside the pastors and really working together with the church. But I think sometimes there's fear because the parents and families, they function differently, they look differently, or their level of faith is different, or they may have one parent who's not a believer yet, or there's a single parent, or there's a language barrier. So I think there's a lot of factors that can add to fear. And so I think it's our job is to encourage them that really coming alongside is going to look differently for everybody, that it's not you leading the family worship every day and doing the devotionals with the kids. Like that might be overwhelming for the parents. And some of them might say, I just can't do it and just stop there. But really providing, I think, avenues and ways for us to really be able to let them know, like there's different ways, even just praying with them simple prayers, or even if it means for your family, just starting together with having a family meal and praying before a meal. If that's not what you're used to, maybe that's where you start. I don't know. So, I mean, I think figuring out different expectations is helpful.
That's great, Tracy. That's really, really good. I think one of the things that Rooted taught me right off the bat when I was in my first year of ministry is that a lot of parents, whether they realize it or not, have a dry cleaning mentality with youth group. And by that, we mean that you drop your kids off at youth group on Sunday night, just like you would your dry cleaning, with the expectation that your kid will get nice and cleaned up. You'll pick them up on the way home, and bada bing, you're done. And obviously, spiritual formation is just not that simple. Would that it were. And so I think that is a big part of partnering with parents, is inviting parents into a more robust view than simply a dry cleaning model or an outsourcing model. So that's one thing I'm really grateful for, that I think Rooted is really passionate about, is inviting parents more into the role of discipleship. And Tracy, your point, I think, leads us well into our next question, which is, what are some challenges that you guys see as it relates to partnering with parents? And I think this is where your specific ministry context really will be helpful here, because I know challenges can look different based on where you're doing ministry. So I'd love to hear from y'all. What are some frequent challenges you run into?
I can start with this one. Our challenge is actually for us, because we're a Korean American church, we have, multi languages. So we have families where the parents are mostly Korean speaking and the children are mostly English speaking. So oftentimes there's a language barrier and just even a cultural barrier right there that kind of keeps them from interacting more naturally, or sometimes it's tricky to kind of figure out what those things are. But again, God is good and God is faithful, and he provides ways for us to, come over those challenges.
Praise God.
Yeah.
I would say one of our most one of our biggest challenges is the families that come to our church are from really all over the city. So we have a lot of different types of backgrounds, and so there's really not this kind of unified struggle that our families are wrestling through. Some are from affluent suburbia, some are from more of the gritty downtown, and so there can be some different, just like subcultural challenges that maybe our families are working through with their kids, that when I try and exegete the cultures of the various families, there's just a lot of different maybe different issues that, if they were all from one place, then it might be a little bit easier to say, okay, well, here's where we really need to focus. Here's where we could specifically partner with them and maybe equip and encourage them. But for us, we have a lot of different, which can be exciting, but is definitely challenging.
That is really challenging.
Yeah, and I work in a context, a Chinese American context, similar to Tracy, and we have a lot of those similar challenges that Tracy mentioned. The language difference, but also the culture difference is a big one too. The parents, the way they raise their children, because most of them immigrated from China or Hong Kong or Taiwan, and that's different than the way people tend to manage and raise their children here in America. And children here, the teenagers expect a different way of parenting than the parents are used to parenting, and that creates a share of conflicts in trying to partner with parents. A lot of them don't feel very educated about a lot of the issues, and a lot of them aren't very aware of a lot of the nuances that teenagers face here in the United States. and they need someone to kind of help them understand that and guide them through that process. So that's always a challenge in trying to help them understand how you parent, everything from the discipline, how you structure their day, how you relate to them, how you communicate with them. There's so many different challenges and nuances like that in my particular context.
Mm. Wow, that's good, y'all. And I would imagine in your different cultural contexts, especially even just in your particular youth group, from family to family, the cultural idols are different. So you're working with just a whole bunch of, a whole bunch of different contexts, and that makes it all the more challenging. So I'm all the more grateful for what you guys do. Steve, you bring up a good point of educating parents. And I remember earlier you used the word preemptive preparation. I really love that. Good alliteration there. So we've addressed some of the problems that we run into when it comes to partnering with parents, but let's talk about a little bit how we address these problems, moving into more practical ways to partner with parents. Love to hear from y'all. Where have you seen fruit come from partnering with parents? What are some of the things you practically do in your ministries to bring parents along? Let's move into the more practical ways that you guys partner with parents in your ministries.
Yeah, and as a youth pastor, and the effective youth pastor who really understands what they're doing, understands that their role is as much a pastor to the parents as it is to the teenagers.
Good.
And for me, in my context, we offer Sunday school classes every Sunday, and I would take out of every couple of years or so an entire quarter, like 13 weeks, to teach a parenting class. I know that that's a touchy subject because not all youth pastors are able to teach like parenting per se, but there's a lot of things that ways in which you can help parents understand the plight of the teenager that don't necessarily have to do with directly teaching how to parent. But there's a lot of areas where they need help. They need more understanding. And like I mentioned, that in the Chinese context that we're in, a lot of them want to understand how do these American teenagers think. Like what they're dealing with as parents is not what they dealt with as teenagers and younger people themselves. So they wanted someone to kind of help them understand how this teenager works. And I think that's one way to do that. There's other ways in which you can do it in terms of building relationships with them. I know that after the youth meeting, I spend as much time talking to parents as I do the teenagers. It's very tempting as a youth pastor to want to just talk to the teenagers, but the parents are the ones that bring them there.
Yeah.
And the parents are the ones who have the final say. And I've worked in both context, the highly Americanized context and this Chinese context. In the Americanized context, there's much more of an egalitarian relationship between the parent and the child. And here it's much more like the parent is the authority and their word is not to be questioned. And that means that if you want the teenager to come and be involved, you have to go through the parent a lot of situations. So it's important to make sure that as you're helping them and you're guiding them and you're realizing that like your ministry is just as much to them as it is to the teenager.
That's great, Steve.
Mm-hmm.
Connor, what are some ways you practically partner with parents?
Yeah, so I think one of the easiest low-hanging fruit ways that you can start today, if you assess your ministry and you're like, I'm not sure I'm really doing a great job of partnering with parents, is assess your communication style. How are you communicating with parents? And I don't necessarily mean just talking with them, but how are you disseminating information? Whether it's like in our context, I send out a weekly newsletter that has everything in the subject line they need to know and is very brief in the content. Really just saying, hey, we're meeting this week, and if there's an important announcement or something like that, that's creating a line of communication that's reliable, that they know that you're connected to them. And then, as Steve said, on days that you do meet, making sure that you talk with them, making sure that you approach them, recruit a team that maybe in those first like 15, 20 minutes as students are being dropped off, recruit a team that's really excited to be there and kind of bring the energy with kids so that you can maybe step outside and meet parents at the car. I've seen that's an incredible opportunity to have a word with them, to encourage them. I've had opportunities a lot of our parents, they're walking around with a lot of shame about guilt of how they're parenting, or ways that they've messed up, ways they want to do better. And there's incredible opportunity, not in some grand way, but to simply share the gospel and to relieve the burden that they're carrying around by just smiling at them and having a brief conversation with them. That's partnering with parents. That's creating that relationship and reminding them that, hey, I'm on your team. Like, I'm here for you. And I think that when I think about partnering with parents, more than anything, it's about reminding parents that, hey, we're on the same team, that this isn't a rival situation where I'm just trying to take your kids and make you feel bad about putting them in a bunch of activities, but this is, hey, I'm here and I want to be this really valuable supplement to their discipleship. And if you feel deficient in some areas, let me help you. Because one of the beautiful things is, if you're a youth worker, you're getting paid to wake up and think about what is going on in this generation's world. And a lot of our parents don't have the bandwidth to do that. Yet we do. And that's a huge privilege. And it's a huge opportunity to where we can help resource our parents to say, like, hey, here's what's going on in their world. I know you might not have time to look up what the latest brands and the Gen Z loves, but guess what? Here's an article. I can do that. So we actually recently started kind of another practical thing, like resource roundup that utilizes Rooted's top 10 and some other articles. Like throughout the month, if I see something that's like, oh, that might be interesting, like putting in a little shared folder, and then at the last Friday of every month, like sending it out. And I told the parents, like, hey, if this is your thing, subscribe. If it's not, unsubscribe. But it's at least an opportunity to say, hey, I care about you, and I want you to, and I care about your kids coming to know Jesus. And here's some ways that might help.
Connor, that's so excellent. That's just so good. Love those practical tools. And, thinking back to Steve's metaphor he used at the very beginning of this conversation, I think one of the easiest ways we can partner with parents is to remind them that we are on the same team. The parents are the star players, we're the supporting players, but we're on the same team. And that team is your child's spiritual development. I think so often we assume that we all think that way, but it can be so helpful to remind parents that we want the same thing. We want to support you in your role. You also reminded me, Connor, I love what you said, just about getting little touches in with parents whenever you can, interacting with them, grabbing coffee, chatting after youth group. I remember several years ago when I was new to youth ministry, I had a student that was really struggling with an eating disorder, and it had gotten pretty bad to the point that her parent for sure needed to be involved. And so I invited the mom out to coffee, and we didn't have a relationship at that point, and it was kind of awkward. And so I remember thinking, I wish that I developed this relationship with this woman earlier, so that by the time it came to me needing to talk to her about her daughter and seeking ways we could help her daughter, that would have just been a lot more natural. So that's just an encouragement to form relationships with parents early. That way, if crises do arise, you already have that bond.
Mm-hmm.
Tracy, would love to hear from you on some of the practical ways that you partner with parents in your ministry, ways you've been blessed as a parent through that.
Yeah, sure. So we've had to be a little bit creative in sort of the way that we navigated this. So, we wish we could just do the coffee with the parents, but culturally speaking, that kind of doesn't work for us. It might work for us if we're on the campus of church and you happen to be holding coffee together, and we have a food culture at our church and it's really big. So we might be able to do something like that, but with the language barrier, cultural barrier, honor, shame, it's kind of awkward for the youth pastor to just plug themselves in and say, hey, let's have coffee. So for us, actually, one of the ways that we've discovered we can kind of, help parents understand that they need to partner with us and come alongside us is we had to get creative. And for us, we use food as that sort of avenue. So because food is so important to us in the way that we, care for our children, every Friday night when youth group meets, the parents get together. We have a PTA and the parents get together and they cook food because they want their kids to have fresh food. They've been working hard, studying hard all week long. So they don't want their kids to just have pizza on Friday, So the moms get together and they cook. And that was a great way to just bring parents in. And we have a group where we do it by grade. So like we'll say, okay, all the 9th grade moms will be this week and all the 10th grade moms will be the following week, and et cetera, et cetera. And so that's a great way for us because that felt so non-threatening for them. They didn't have to know any theological information, or they didn't have to have, some big, we're going to ask you to pray or anything like that, but they're literally just coming to be the hands and feet, and to just provide for the children, to be in that space. But it also opened up an area where the parents were then comfortable to watch. And actually, it's not even just moms for us. Sometimes it's dads who come on Fridays after work, and they'll come in and they'll see, the children eating and hanging out. And it's a great sort of peek into what Friday night looks like. And so that also allows them to be an advocate for the ministry as well. And so that was a great way. Obviously, those are also moments that as the parents are coming earlier and preparing the food and children are arriving, for the youth pastor to sneak in there and just say hi, say thank you, and interact with them and show face. I think that's been a really great way for us to sort of navigate that and be a bridge and allow them to partner with us.
Mm-hmm. I love that idea, Tracy. A good reminder that food can solve most problems. Really,
yeah.
Well, you guys, I've been so grateful to talk to y'all. Thank you so much for your insights on partnering with parents. Thank you for what you do as parents and as youth pastors. And thank you all, the viewers, for watching and joining us for this RRG. Hope you'll join us in the months to come. And know that we are praying for you. Know that we're so grateful for your ministries and the way that you point students to Jesus and ground them in the gospel. We're so grateful for you. And we pray God's blessing over you as you finish out this week. So thank you all for being here, and hope you all have a great rest of your day.